Hey, how's everybody doing?
Check, check. Thank you for that lovely introduction, Caroline. Felt like it was my eulogy, and I was like, "That's what it must feel like." I'll be looking over my coffin and getting all the flowers at that point. But yeah, thank you very much for that wonderful intro, and thank you to all the teams involved with putting this such a great event on, and obviously the lovely audience in the house. Truly appreciate your energy and your presence here today. I would also like to thank Uncle Rick for the welcome to country. Before we commence, I would also like to acknowledge and pay my respects to the owners of the land that's we're very fortunate to meet on, that we're very fortunate to exchange ideas and thoughts and energy on, and very fortunate to, 10 toes down on the land of the Wiradjuri people. And as I was researching the Wiradjuri people and the local environment, I read about these many trees that adorn the landscape, and how they had these intricate carvings on them, traditional geometric designs. And these trees would usually mark burial grounds, and as you would expect, have a major importance and significance to the Wiradjuri people. Now remember that. I'm going to circle back to that in a bit. I want to also acknowledge and pay my respects to the elders past and present, and also extend that acknowledgement, respect, and love to any mob that's in the house today. We acknowledge that sovereignty has never been ceded, always was, always will be Aboriginal land. I was going to introduce myself, but I kind of topped that introduction. So we'll we'll keep it moving. But I will say that I have done a lot of things, but at the very core of it all, I'm just a music fan, a music lover. And that's always going to be at the forefront of everything I do. So very privileged to be here and share my experiences, as well as talk to this, I can say young man because I'm heaps older than you, young man that I've known for a couple of years. So it's great that we get to share the stage today. In my acknowledgement, as you recall, I was talking about the carving of trees, the importance of these trees as they represent expression, tradition, and the stories told for the future generations to see. This is what my special guests, along with his peers, are doing right now. But instead of carving on trees, they're carving on beats. They're carving on pieces of paper. They're carving on sound waves. My guest is a prolific writer, an MC, a producer, a composer, a drummer, a workshop facilitator, a mentor, an activist. And I know he doesn't like, we've had this conversation before, he doesn't like me calling you activist because he feels like that takes away from other activists that are out in the field really putting in that work. But, I see you out there, you're doing your work, so I'm going to call you activist, and I'm bigger than you, so you can't say anything else. But he's also an FBI SMAC Award winner, a NEMA winner, and an ARIA winner. I'm black, no matter what a white person telling me. You're walking all together, all as one, like a centipede. Want to talk about me? Listen up and learn my history. Forget that school textbook, that shit be elementary. Please welcome to the conversation a proud Filipino and Aboriginal man, DOBBY. Brought that one out of the dark ages of that one. How you doing, man?
Good, brother.
Yeah.
I'm feeling really hyped up now.
Let's go. That's what we're
the
here,
best
man.
yarn I've ever had.
Yeah. I will say also that the last 15 minutes of this conversation, we're going to open up the floor for any questions. So throughout the conversation, think of some questions, or if there's anything we talk about sparks a question in your mind, please get involved at the end of the conversation. We'd love to hear from you. Yeah. Plus, we'll be around all day anyway, so you can ask then too. But let's, sorry, before we get into that, we're about to delve into the wonderful and the mysterious world of the creative process and the creative space. We can touch on the simplicities, the complexities. We can keep it brief. We can go deep. Let's just go where the energy takes us. But yeah, let us start off light. Just get the blood flowing. What did you eat for breakfast?
I ate right out there. and saw everyone walking in
Oh,
as I was
we
having
gotta
my
get a review.
as I was having my Vegemite sandwich. Could I, and just actually, while I have the chance, I just want to say like how crazy it is to be, like this is a bit of a trip because he is a man that I've looked up to since my whole career, and when I was a child wanting to be in hip hop music, looking up at like all of the cats, Elephant Tracks, Obese Records, you know, everything that you were doing with Coolism, and then, you know, I'm going to keep coming back to this because you're one of those people that have done everything in the music industry. You're an author, you're a, record label owner. So it's like, I have questions for you as well as like, what does it mean for a musician to be like in all of these different pockets? But I'm just very honored to be, you know, amongst a hero of mine. So yeah, for real. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, give him a,
appreciate
come on,
it.
yeah, come on.
Thank you. And that concludes our chat. But yeah, your breakfast. What's happening?
I had Vegemite, salmon, coffee,
Vegemite and salmon.
a second coffee, and then a third coffee.
I'm a bit nervous today. Is that dependent? You know, it kind of feels like it's a kind of throw off kind of question, but I mean, it kind of is. But just to kind of get the blood flowing. But it is important because I feel, does your breakfast, is it very dependent on what you're doing for the day? Like if you're going to go into the studio, if you're a writing session.
Oh yeah. Yeah, 100%. And now that I'm getting older, I realize that what I eat is really important. That I can't just like survive off of mee goreng every day. And it actually needs to be something. Although I still have mee goreng, and I had that yesterday, so you know, I got to be careful what I say. But like, no, it's important, you know. And yes, very much. If I have a performance or if I have a studio session, I'm like, I got to make sure I have something more than just like a banana and a coffee, like something a bit more substantial.
What about rituals? Do you have a morning ritual, be it kind of spiritual, traditional,
Rituals,
or just
yes. And I don't even know, I don't know if I can even identify what it is. There is a mental ritual. There is a connection that happens before you start. Musos in the room know about this. I feel right before they, you know, you click the 4 clicks before you jump in. There's something special that happens, and I feel like that's kind of a mental ritual because it's a mental preparation. It's like I'm going in. No one else is in this booth. Like if you choose to do it this way, no one else is in that booth around you, and it's kind of like you make peace with the space. It's acknowledgement. It's acknowledgement of space. That's a ritual to me. I have rituals before I perform. I try and star jump as much as I can so that I can get my nervous energy out. And then I'm like, oh, I'm tired. Let's do this show. And it feels right. It's kind of like the balance feels exactly, you know, where it needs to be. I have this is a ritual that it has nothing to do with performing or studio time. But since you asked, I have a takeoff ritual. So whenever I'm on a plane, I listen to this one song and one song only. It's Positive Paradise by Klee. And it's a random but beautiful song. And the reason is because when I went to Big Sound Festival for the first time in 2017, I feel like things really took off. And it was just like the start of a really beautiful career. And that song was playing as I was taking off on the plane. And so now I do it every time. And I've done it every single flight except one since 2017. To Dubbo, to Brizzy, to like any flight, I've always listened to that song. Just one flight that my AirPods wasn't working, and I felt like I was gonna like crash or something. I was like really set off, you know. But I don't know. There's something beautiful about that because I know I'm talking a lot about this one song, but when you listen to one song every time, you find new ways to enjoy it, and you find new things in the song that you never realized or appreciated before. So I feel like that says something about how we listen to music.
That is interesting because it's like a film as well, like a film that you watch and you're like, oh, I like that film, but every time you watch it, you pick up different nuances throughout the film. What about the process of, or the ritual going into it when you're trying to tap into the creative process?
I feel I like to be in a park or bodies of water. I don't know if musos also resonate with this. Like, I feel like, you know, if you're trying to find inspiration, some people like to be walking, some people like to be in busyness. I like those things, but I feel like water does it for me, for more than anything else. I feel very, very at peace, you know, and like you're watching something flow by, like a river. It really helps you to kind of put yourself symbolically in that movement, and you're like, oh, okay, right, here comes the words, you know. So I like to do that when I'm writing my music, or if I'm writing a song and I've recorded it, I go for a walk and I walk on and listen to how the song sounds outside of that dingy studio with no sunlight. You know, I'm like, oh, okay, this is what the song sounds like in sunlight. Yeah. So sun and water are my rituals.
And was that feeling the reason why you did a project like Warangu? Because what it felt like, bodies of water and the essence of water felt like you, or to you, sorry.
Yeah, I mean that happened naturally. Warangu was more about an obligation to the river. You know, I was really lucky enough I applied for the Peter Sculthorpe Fellowship with Create New South Wales, and I was, you know, gobsmacked that I had been the recipient of this. And I knew that from the get-go of that application, I was like, I want to write about the river. I want to write about Bree. I want to write about the Murray-Darling Basin, or the Barwon River more specifically. But I didn't know what it would be about. And people like Brad Stedman, Lily Shearer, Brad Hardy, they were the ones that kind of guided me through that process of like, well, this is what you're going to write about. If you're going to write about the river, it's going to be about this. So they were kind of like my river, to be honest, because it was me being sort of inspired by their words or referencing their words. But to your question, I feel like it also helped inform the way I write now, because now when I look at a river, it reminds me of like that flow. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Now we were talking about your rituals and your breakfast of Vegemite and salmon.
Sounds awful.
Talking about the beginnings of Dobby's day, but let's talk about the beginnings of Dobby as a writer, a drummer, an MC. Was there an artist or a musician or writer you saw when you were young and thought, "Yep, that's what I want to be right there"?
Jim Blah.
Yeah.
Blah.
For those who aren't familiar with Jim Blah, he's an incredible writer, visionary, great rapper, even better singer. Yeah,
he's fantastic. Such a talented pianist as well. He was definitely one of the big influences. And then, of course, there's like, early days, Hilltop Hoods, Bliss and Nesso, Downside. All of them were big. And this is a time when like only hip hop was sort of like bursting out of the seams, when you're kind of seeing it reach a surface level commercialism. Before it was so underground, as you know, you being one of the people that helped its rise to the public eye. We're dealing with an art form that has been fighting for its existence from the very genesis. So it is inspiring in its nature. So any rapper that I looked at, I was like, they are part of the revolution. They're part of this rebellious music, this music that fights for the community, that fights for the voices of the marginalized, that fights for the people and the narratives of the people. So it's not just the artist that I looked up to, it was the very culture that I really was inspired by as a kid. I started, playing piano at age 7, and that was really, a beautiful privilege to have. Learning drums at high school, jazz. But like all the while, I always wanted to be a hip hop artist because I love people like Eminem. I love people like MF Doom. I love people like Missy Elliott, Lauryn Hill, The Far Side, and then all of our local artists here. So it came out of mimicry. I tried to be like them. I wrote like Snoop Dogg. I wrote like, you know what I mean? Like I'm like, oh,
Oh, you weren't smoking weed, but
Yeah. I rapped about it, but I didn't. But yeah, that's definitely like how my upbringing was. Yeah.
And did the writing come naturally to you? Because as a pianist and a drummer, I guess it's quite physical, isn't it? Like there's a lot of movement in those performances and actions. Like, did the writing come naturally to you?
Uh, not immediately, not at first, because it was very much trying to write like Eminem and all of that stuff. And then when I was like trying to figure out how to apply this knowledge and this culture to my story, that was hard. Because I guess for the first time ever, I was learning how to use it as a songwriting tool to express my being. And I wrote about, things that mattered to me as a kid. I wrote about Warilla. I wrote about the South Coast. I wrote about, I wrote about my parents' separation, things like that, but it was both difficult, but then so rewarding, and I'm sure that you have so many stories of that as well, like as a kid, like when you're first engaging with the pen and you're like, oh, this is serving me, like this is helping me tell my story. Yeah. So that was a long process, but it happened over those first years, in high school.
I love to hear that because you're drawing from everything that surrounds you, your environment, your people. How hard or easy was it to draw that inspiration from your travels, from your upbringing, and then kind of channeling it into an actual song or crafting it into a song?
I feel like that's only just happened recently. Yeah, I don't know, because a lot of the a lot of the music that I wrote as a kid was a very generic hip hop. How many hip hop artists are in the room? Do we have a lot of hip hop artists in the room? It's like we got one. Okay, we got one. All right, cool.
But since you're asking,
Shout out Yuri.
since you are asking the audience question, because I was kind of curious, because we're all made up of different mediums and different practices. So are we all musicians, or we have some producers as well?
Yep.
Writers, performers. Yeah.
Country?
Where do you fall in? I love it.
Oh, true. Okay. Why didn't you put your hand up there? Yeah. That's hip hop. Yeah. Yeah. Puerto Rican influence, Native American influence. No, that's mad. That's great. Blues. Yeah. Fantastic. Awesome. Yeah, because the reason I ask is that for me, when I was writing music, it was very a generic structure: verse, chorus, chorus. And you repeat the chorus. And it was like the last two lines. It was very Tupac style method. Where you take the last two lines of your verse and you repeat that, and that becomes your chorus. And it's like, well, bada bing, bada boom, that's a new track. And I was practicing that. It was a factory for me, and I loved the making and the mechanism of writing hip hop songs. And I'm not saying that they weren't in depth, because there was some stuff, but it was a lot of it was buffer. You know what I mean? It was a lot of it was a lot of filler lyrics. And only just now I'm realizing like what a potential verse that reaches your identity, that it can engage with political activism, that can help move the conversation forward ecologically. How can we bring in language reclamation in hip hop music? And I've been a strong advocate for this since 2015 when I started writing about it academically. There is so much potential power that you have already seen in hip hop music that people still like to deny, and it's I'm biased, right? Because I'm a mongrel blues hip hop artist, but I think that it is the most direct way of changing minds. I think it's the most direct form of music.
Quite explicit, isn't it?
Yeah. F the police. You know what I mean? Like, so
it can't get more straightforward than that.
Can't get more straightforward than that. I haven't heard, an interpretive jazz song that does the same thing. But Shout out to the jazz musicians in the room. I'm a jazz drummer. I can say this, okay?
That's going to be part of your workshop today, is to write a jazz song. Like F the police.
Yeah. Miles Davis.
I mean, there's
No,
a
you're
lot
right.
of
That's
a lot of
true.
a lot of
that's
feelings
exactly
and
right.
emotions.
Yeah, shout out
definitely.
Miles. You're right. That's exactly
but
right.
I think in saying that, like there is a lot of words in hip hop, but you also mentioned there's a lot of filler, and I think as you grow older, I definitely found for myself, because when you start off as a rapper, I want to show how many words I know, how many flows I can do, and regardless of genre, you always always want to flex your chops and stuff, and then as you get older and you realize like less is more. You can actually say so much just within like kind of almost oversimplified verse, because it just kind of opens up the interpretation of what you're trying to say a lot more.
No, 100%. And I think, for context as well, hip hop is born out of that braggadocio, bravado culture. It's a sport. And so it's always been a part of the culture in terms of hip hop music about what are the most creative ways that you can say, I'm the best. And that brings in all of this beautiful lyricism, and the craftsmanship of symbolism and metaphor, and the ways that you can do it in your lyrics or even musically. It's a really beautiful art form that I don't think gets enough praise even today after its 50 years.
I agree. You touched on culture and activism within music. Do you feel and I know you draw heavy from you being a Mara warrior man and your Filipino heritage, you draw a lot from your cultures, your upbringing. Do you feel as a writer, if you're of a certain culture or cultures, you need to draw from it? Like, is that a responsibility as a writer?
Great question, bro. The power is in you own the power. I can't sit here and tell you that if you're a Aboriginal man that you have to write about your Aboriginality, because it comes out no matter what you do. I think it reminds me of a quote that Brad Stedman, who was a big part of Wurrunga River Story, he said to me. He was like, just remember, brother, you're not a man doing Aboriginal things. You're an Aboriginal man doing things. And I was like, damn, that's exactly right. It's embedded in us. This is our being, So I don't have to prove anything to anyone. There are amazing, I'm using First Nations as an example, but this spreads far and wide to all the, across the board. But I know so many First Nations artists that don't necessarily speak, as overtly as me about their identity. That doesn't make them any less black. It makes them an incredible artist nonetheless. So it's about how you express yourself. And again, it comes back to like, this is our self-expression. And that's not just hip-hop music, that's music in general. So the power is in our pen. Yeah.
Going back to the project, because your past project has always been very rap heavy, like lyrics on lyrics, whereas the new project, there are a few, but a lot of it is just words from elders or from people that you respect, and the sounds of the landscape and the water. What are the major differences between writing those kind of projects?
Yeah. I take each project as like a conceptual mission. Wurrunga River Story, obviously, in order to accomplish what I was trying to do and tell that story, it needed to be done a certain way, Kendrick Lamar is one of my favorite artists of all time. And one of the reasons being, each album that he does is a different color palette. It's a different sound palette, Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers is a therapy album where he looks deep within himself. It's very different to Damn, which is about universality of the universal concepts of love and lust and jealousy, that he looks deep within to himself and how that reflects outwards. And then that's different again to Pimp a Butterfly, which is a uniquely, distinctly black experience in white America. Each album is and that's a jazz album as compared to
Not only different lyrically but sonically as well. Yeah,
I've always really appreciated that, and so for Warango River Story, that's like, in order to tell the Murray-Darling Basin story, I need to have Brad Stedman on it, and I need to have. It's not going to be just hip hop. It's going to be folk music. It's going to be Kelsey Strasik Barker from, Mudawari Yuwalarai woman from Lightning Ridge, who's going to sing a folk song, because that's what it needs to be. It's a community voice album. It's very different to the album that I'm working on now, which is a time travel story back to high school. So the voices are, yeah. Plug. So the voices are going to be different because the story is different. The sound's going to be different. It's a lot more jazz, It's interesting, And I love that because that's what we get to do. It's like, all right, get the new canvas, get color palette, and paint away.
And how do you prepare for something like that? Even like making that decision and thinking, you know what, the next project, I'm just going to take it back to my high school years. Is that a big process for you? Like you kind of sit in the room, okay, what do I need to do next? Or does it kind of just come to you?
Well, in this particular case, Warango and this album, I came up with the idea for both of them at the same time, which was 2017. So I've been working on this one for 7 years. Yeah. So I don't even know what to say.
Let's talk about that, because I think there's a lot of placement on time for artists, like especially with hip hop. We'll try not to make this so hip hop centric because I know there's a lot of different people writing different kinds of music, but at the core of it, that's who we are, so it'll always come up. But I forgot what I was going to ask, man.
Yeah,
what are we talking about?
About time.
Time, yes,
Yeah.
time. Ironically, yeah. So, as hip hop artists, we're always so fixated on like what's now, what's fresh.
That's
like
right.
I wrote this song like 2 months ago. It's too old now.
Yeah.
Like,
oh man, I have so many.
And I'm sure there's a lot of people here that have written a song when they were in high school, like 20 years ago. But it's still, it may be old to you, and you've heard it so many times. Like, no one wants to hear this, but trust me, man, people want to hear that. I feel anyway.
No, I have so many thoughts on this. You're really like firing all the neural things in my brain, because that's exactly the concept of this album. And I won't say too much about that album, but so there's an album that I made back in 2009, and the songs are terrible. But they're beautiful. Do you know what I mean? Because it's part of my artistry, and I'm gonna honor that.
Like a time capsule.
And I go back in time and I save that album from myself before I destroy it. So patent pending. Don't take my idea. So, but you know what I mean? Like, so I have so much belief in the growth of an artist, not just for hip hop artists, but all of y'all. Like, this is your seedling. And then it grows into who you are now. But you wouldn't be who you are without those awful songs. So you need to like find and accept and foster that inner child, that childhood song in you. I have so much thought about that. And I guess that's kind of why this album took so long, is because I'm like, well, I want to, sort of convey that in a certain way, But yeah, time is a really important thing. I know so many artists who like, they dig back in the archives and they're like, oh, this song I never finished, but I'm now performing it, and what a beautiful thing
How many of you guys got unfinished songs in the vault? I'm sure there's a lot of. Finish them. I always feel like, don't let them gather like digital dust. Just put it out in the ether. Like, let us enjoy it.
Digital Dust. That's a great band name.
I patent that too.
His idea, don't.
Well, between, we were talking about those kind of projects, and I mean, even the new one that's about to come out, like which is harder to approach in terms of a creative process? Is just rapping like bars and bars, is that just so kind of effortless for you now, as opposed to like, let me just kind of think more about arrangement and composition and
Well, I wish I could say the prior, but because my head has been in concept album mode for the past 7 years, I haven't known any other way. Which is fine. Like that's absolutely fine because I love it, right? Like I again, Kendrick, a big fan. So I love concept albums. Um, I don't know if you know much about Kendrick, but like Damn is meant to be an album that you can play front to back and then back to front, right? If you genius. So like I love this stuff. Like that stuff is incredible. You know, it plays with you know, Radiohead, all of these things. So I want again. I'm mimicking. Like I want to be those people, and so I want to write, you know, concept albums, and I get stuck in it, and you think of it like a novel, and you know, I feel that the ideas that we as creatives have are not just songs. They could be children's books. They could be play scripts. But give yourself the time to really sit with that and stew on it and think, well, what is this really? Like, is this a theater play? Like, this could be something else, you know? Or it's all three or four, you know? I don't know if you've read The Creative Act by Rick Rubin. Anybody? It's a fantastic book. Yeah, I've had many a conversation with some friends about it, you know, debating what it means and if it is like a bit of, you know, one thing he says is that we're all creative, and one person I was talking to was like, that's not true. I think that's true. I think we all have creativity in us. That's what makes us human. It's just that we creatives in the room and people like us have more sensitive antennae, as he says, and so we can channel those ideas that come to us. But the idea is that it comes to us. We didn't make that. We channel it. And if you don't write it, or if you don't finish that digital dusty song that's sitting on your hard drive, then that goes to Hal. And then Hal's going to write that song, and he's going to get another aria. So write that song.
We'll talk about percentages after the talk. I love how you talk about albums. You know, like I was born in the '70s, grew up albums. You know, I love how an artist presents their work. You know, like this is the track listing. This is how you should listen to it. You know, in recent years, the album hasn't been. I mean, I think with the new generation, it's kind of changing, but generations in between, the album is not as important to people. Or maybe important is not the word, but it's a lot of time for people to kind of sit down and listen to however many tracks. So what are your thoughts and I'm sure there's a lot of people with similar thoughts, like single releases as opposed to an album release?
Oh man, another question that's like, I have a lot of thoughts on it. I don't think the album is dead. I think it's actually very much alive. It's part and parcel of the reason why people are buying vinyl more these days, you know. That's still happening, right? Like, so actually, you and I were just having this yarn before, like, a body of work is still a body of work, and I was really worried about Warango because I was like, not only is it an album, but it's
quite dense as
it's
well.
quite dense, and it's a listening album. You have to really sit and take it in, and it to my surprise and my relief, and it did very well, and people had a lot of really lovely
And it
feedback.
won an aria. So
Yeah.
round of applause for aria.
But
In the world music category, but we won't get into that
yeah,
part.
we'll
Yeah.
get, yeah. But and so my point is, like, I think albums are very much alive, and I think people are actually looking for that. You know, we can't pander to the fast food consumerism of our music. This is your idea. How dare you diminish yourself? You know what I mean? Like, unless you wrote a song that really well and truly is 2 minutes and 20 seconds and you love it that way and it feels right, then do it. But if you cut that down from a 7-minute ballad, don't do it. You know, have two
It's like
versions.
a disservice to yourself.
Yeah,
isn't it?
don't change yourself for anyone, because there is an audience for every single one of you. Yeah.
Especially like genres like folk, blues, like soul. You know, those kind of genres afford that consumption. Like, oh, let me sit down, let me pour a bit of red wine, let me just listen to this. You know,
Exactly.
sit back.
Yeah, Yeah, exactly. People still listen to things that way, you know? And yeah, so we can't pretend like the whole industry is now just looking for that one 2 minute 20 song every 3 months.
But like you said, if you are a pop writer, then
That's gonna
your
be
bag.
your
Like,
that's
go
that's
for it.
exactly right, yeah. Are there any pop writers in the room? Odette!
Odette at the back. Everyone say hello to Odette over the back there. She's doing the workshops as well.
Hey!
Okay, going from writing fluently, effortlessly, receiving the information and the blessings and the vibrations from the universe of your writing sessions. Let's talk about, because I know it's a topic that comes up every time I do these similar panels, and I'm sure there's someone in this audience that's going to ask a similar question in the Q&A, which will be coming up very soon, so get your questions ready. Writer's block. How do you deal with it? How do you break through? How do you deal with the pressure?
Yeah, I go for a walk. Take your song and go for a walk, because so many times I've like been in the studio or been at home and you're writing it and you're like, I'm just trying to figure this out. Something happens to your brain when you're thinking about the same song whilst driving, or the same song whilst walking through a park, or even having it in the background during a conversation. I don't know.
Yeah, when your mind's kind of fixated on something else.
Yeah, like John Mayer says, approach it diagonally. You creep up on it, you know? You kind of creep up on the idea. Do something, shower. Go for a shower and then have it in the background and it might come to you.
If you're going through writer's block, you probably need that shower too.
Yeah. You've been in the studio too long. I think that's a really good idea, going for a walk and listening to it to get a fresh perspective. Don't be afraid to show your friends as well. Have a couple of people on call to be like, I need a fresh pair of ears, because that almost always helps, actually.
Outside of that circle as well, I usually find, because they're not too closely attached to anything. They kind of approach it in a bit more of a
exactly
different perspective. Yeah.
Exactly. So I think, you know, we got to remember that a community is a community and music is a part of that. So, you know, that's what they would have done back in the day. So we, you know, share that song with people, share it with, you know, bring people to your place or your studio and ask them their feedback. And again, like I was saying earlier, that, you know, it could be something else. Maybe the reason that you're getting stuck on it is because there's a visual aspect of it that you're not considering. Or maybe there's a bit more story to it, you know. There's another story from the Rick Rubin book that I thought was so cool. I can't even remember the band at this point, but maybe you, Mob, might tell me. They were stuck on like the bridge of a song. They were like, something needs to be here. And then he was like, take that book out and open it to a random page. And then System of the Down, that's right, yeah. And then that was like a Bible verse or something. It was a Bible quote. And so they added that into the song in the bridge. And they were like, it's perfect. You know, so yeah, think outside the box, talk with your friends, go for a walk, or even just consider it in different angles, different ways, you know.
Yeah, I think changing your environment really helps. That resonates with what you were talking about. I remember when I was going through writing blocks and I would just catch public transport all around the city, like ferries, trains, buses, and just being in different parts of the city and letting it trigger different parts of your brain. I even went to, sounds a bit doom and gloom, but I went to like the cemetery where my uncles were buried and just kind of sat down there and was just not really trying to think about the song, just let things come to me and let emotion and you know, just even like sounds of birds and leaves rustling and you know.
That's beautiful, bro. 100%. Energy is a really important thing. And as creatives, I know that you know that, like, the energy that you find yourself in, again, it could be water, it could be peace, it could be a busy cafe, whatever it is. But I also think we, with your sensitive antennae, can be really open to ideas. Like this album that I'm working on, the amount of times it's come up without me even saying anything, just in the world. It's like a little sign. And you kind of got to really don't be cynical. Like, actually
Yeah, you gotta
be that
I think,
whimsical kid that's like,
yeah,
hold on.
you're always gonna
What
be
did you say?
curious.
You
And
know?
and I think it's important that, like what you're saying, is to be open to receive
Be
a lot of
open,
things.
yeah. Receive those things, you know. Jay-Z is another great example of that. Like, he used to tell stories of when he would get an idea, he would stop in the middle of traffic and write down the lyrics, which you shouldn't do.
Or even like on your phone while driving
Yeah,
either.
pull
so.
over first and then write your idea and then go back.
Have you ever purposely taken a break from writing?
Yeah, I think that's really good point. That's a really good point. You need to give yourself the break because it's not even a break. Do you know what I mean? Like, again, you're opening yourselves. Some people don't like to work as like treated as like a 9 to 5. Doesn't necessarily work that way for everyone, you know. Maybe it's like a dream that you have in the middle of the night, but you're not going to have that dream if you don't get a good night's sleep. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we could talk on forever, but
This is great.
you know, I want to, the beautiful audience here, and I'm sure there's a lot of questions or statements or something, and I would love to get your thoughts and get you involved more. So I think if you don't mind, let's open up the floor and have some questions and some conversations. So, my man over here, have we got a mic that we can pass around? Sorry to interrupt your lunch, Caroline. Eating some Vegemite and salmon. Nah.
I feel so. I regret telling you what I had for
No,
breakfast.
it was Vegemite and salmon.
Not like on the sandwich, just on the side.
This gentleman here passes.
Tapping in on the album concept, it's been around for ages. It's a document of a diary of your creative point in time of who you are, where you're at, and each album is different because you're evolving, you're changing as just a person, you're an artist, and you record that as a diary, a testament to your creativity.
Yes.
Beautifully said. And I remember I saw someone say, like, if you're cringing at your past work, then you're in the right space because you're obviously growing and evolving as a person and as an artist. Yeah.
I do have a question for you as well. When you're at the stage, you said you were in the album writing mode for the last few years. Were you already thinking about the order of the songs, how they were going to be presented on the album? Because we're really struggling there and we would like some advice.
Yeah. Show it to me. Are you in my workshop? We'll let's yarn because the amount of times I've written the track list, and because it's about time, it needs to be in a certain order. And I've gone crazy, like red string on the corkboard, crazy. Being like, and if these ones are all in the same key and then these ones are in different key, then like not many people are even going to notice. It just matters to you. But yeah, it's part of the ritual, you got to
I reckon it's like,
open to it.
As brain numbing as it can be, I think it's a beautiful part of it too. It's like,
Beautiful, yeah.
how can I paint this picture that everyone can receive it?
But also, just before we move on to the next question, what I think is important to acknowledge as well is that, kill your darlings as well. It's not necessarily... I've been challenged. I'm working with a fellow named Tony Buchan, and he's wonderful. He's a great producer, and he's challenged me on a lot of things, and I'm like, actually, you know what? I don't need to be so stubborn on this particular order of the track list or this idea. And you just see how it goes. Like, be open to every change that you're challenged with, because that can be the very thing that gets you out of your writer's block, that sets things up in the right way. So again, that comes back to feedback, Yeah, but we should yarn. It's good. Thanks, Darren.
Look, this might be a slightly technical question, but since you guys are both in the hip-hop world, I thought you might know. 2 of my favourite albums are Homework by Daft Punk and Since I Left You by the Avalanches. Do you think that's sort of...
Very expensive records.
Yeah, do you think that those sort of copy-paste, like cut-paste collage albums are possible anymore? Because I've really wanted to make one, but then I worry that it would be unreleasable
Yeah,
on
that
streaming.
that is exactly that. You know, obviously it is possible. You can make whatever you want to make, but it's just where you want to put it. I think, you know, putting it on streaming platforms, you'll run into a lot of red flags. You know, but you know there are other avenues you put it, and you know you can build communities around those particular streaming services. You know, SoundCloud used to be really good for that. But you know, just even if you have your own personal website or something where you can upload a lot of these things, where you're not worrying about sample clearances because they can be a headache. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. You'd have to look into that. But yeah, to your point, I think if you're thinking of putting it on the bigger platforms, stream platforms, yeah, you'll be running into those kind of headaches. You know.
But live,
Speak to
you
your
wouldn't
friendly
have-
folks at AMCOS.
Yes.
You heard it here first.
You know, I always, that's a big thing for hip hop artists, isn't it? Because you know, it's always like, oh, well, no one will care if we sample this. But
Oh man, people.
I've seen it pop off with different people, you know, and it's not only sample houses that are pulling people up. It's digitally now, you know, like you could just put it out somewhere and it just gets flagged and it's taken down.
Figures it out before anyone else does. It's like the computer chill, you know.
I just love music.
Yeah, that's right. Up the back there. Yeah. So we'll get to everyone hopefully.
Hey,
Hey.
I have a question. You touched on it briefly. You said if you're feeling that cringe feeling, you're probably onto something. Can you like expand on that? Because I'm making an album at the moment and I get that feeling all the time. And I genuinely am like, I must be making something so horrendous. How do you kind of keep the motivation going and keep your confidence up while you're feeling that?
Yeah, where I got it from, I think they were talking from more of a perspective of like their older work, you know, so, you know, 10 years ago. But if you're feeling it right now, making something, I mean, have you...
Yeah, with this current album too, I'm feeling the same thing. Yeah. And it's
Is the
interesting.
cringe kind of like, sorry, is the cringe like, oh, this sounds a bit corny or it's not what I would think that I would want to hear? What's the cringe coming from?
So, like, obviously I was signed with a label for the first 2 records, and I've deviated a little with this album, and I think I'm pushing it in its genre. It's a bit more genre bending, and it almost does take on more elements of hip hop and folk, and it's more gritty. I guess the cringe comes from exploring and venturing out and being more adventurous, and like how to kind of, like boost your confidence while you're trying new things, I guess. That's my question.
Yeah, I think what you just said there is like exactly your motivation. Like because
I
you're,
think it sounds
you're
like
going in
you're
with
kind of getting out of your comfort zone, which I love
Yeah.
to hear. You know,
it's probably a
challenging
great
yourself.
thing because it means that you're doing what you set out to do, right? Like you're like it's already genre bending, and that's probably the feeling that comes with it, which is probably I'm excited.
Are you also kind of be worried about what your existing fans are going to think of it?
Yes.
Screw him.
But I think that's
I'm
going to be
just kidding, I'm
that's
just
going to be the take. Dobby says, "Screw your fans." But I think, you know, like if
Bob
your
Dylan did it.
if your supporters are your supporters, they will take that journey
Yeah.
with you.
And it's another part of you, right? Like, yeah.
And sometimes, like, you know, like the fans aren't equipped for that journey either. You know, and they're just quite happy with the previous 2 releases. You know, and now it's time to pick up some new ones. Exactly right.
Totally. Sounds like a great thing. We'll come to these, Mobby, and then we'll come back. Yeah. Sorry.
You touched earlier on, releasing a single every 3 months digitally, and that, having a body of work is still relevant. How do you get around the Spotify algorithm and priority pitching headache? I don't like it.
Me neither.
Yeah. It is a difficult one because it is a bit of a process. It also depends on what you want to do as an artist. Is Spotify and Apple a part of your journey? If they are, then it is what it is. You have to go through that process and pitch your music. And if it isn't, then there are other avenues. It might be a longer road, but I think in a lot of ways it's quite beneficial. You know, there's a lot of artists starting their own streaming platforms or, you know, just sticking to other ones. But yeah, unfortunately, sometimes the game is the game, and you have to play it. It's very time consuming. You know, it can be overwhelming. It be a lot of money, a lot of time, like I said before. But if your aim is to put music on these streaming platforms, then they're the channels that you have to go through.
Yeah. Do you think that, you know, like when you pitch a song to Spotify, you know, the team that I'm working with have said, don't release a body of work. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of money. I released an EP and only the singles that were released were considered for playlisting. And obviously when you're an emerging artist, playlisting is critical.
Yeah.
But I mean, trying to put it on every streaming platform, like you have a distribution system that's going to do that for you, easy peasy. But I mean, when you want to go and spend 50, 60, 70, $100,000 on a body of work, do you go, well, I'm going to leak those 14 tracks as singles so they can be playlisted, or do I throw them all out there and hope to God that someone listens to them?
That's a difficult one.
Sorry.
That's all right. It's probably above our pay grade, but I will say, like in terms of playlists, I'd like to get your thoughts on playlisting as well. I feel like because I work with a lot of young artists, and playlisting means a lot to them, and I can understand why. There are some benefits of reaching different audiences and different demographics, but also I'm like, it's not the be all and end all. It's like radio play. Like obviously they have their benefits, but I feel like if you're building community from the grassroots, that's just
right.
as beneficial.
I think we're made to believe that, and I'm not saying that it's not important, of course it is, but I think we're made to believe that playlisting is the be all and end all. The radio station, the commercial radio stations, the be all and end all. But, you know, I think about people like True Vibe Nation, who are incredible artists, you know, and their singles make playlisting sometimes. Same as me, I've had good luck and bad luck with playlisting, where I'm like, okay, no, didn't reach, whatever, and you just let it fall where it may. But the performing is what gets me, is what fulfills me both, you know, financially and creatively. So I feel like finding and diversifying as creatives, you know, that's kind of, I don't know, this is not necessarily answering your question, but this is how I am addressing it for me, because I'm like, playlisting is it's like a dark
bonus,
magic, isn't it?
Yeah.
You can never really tell unless you have the right team behind you or you have the right connects, which is definitely a big step. But then also being like, all right, I'm going to let this stream and it reaches whoever it reaches, but I'm also going to fight for my gigs, and that's going to pay my rent, and that's going to make me happy as an artist, and then that doesn't make me as depressed. You know what I mean? So I don't know, like, if that really, but we should definitely have a conversation, and, you know, because there's more to talk about there for sure.
Can I ask my question quickly? Yeah. We'll come to you. We're here. Coming back to the dust collectors, how do you reconcile that feeling of, I feel like a fraud now because that's not who I am anymore? That song that's been sitting there for 5 years, and then thinking, you know, I'm worried about what my fans are going to think. That's what I am at this point in time when it's not.
Yeah, I work with an artist named Kenzie, and she wrote and recorded an album 4 years ago and just put it out in January. And there are a lot of songs that still resonate with who she is now. It's funny, she likened it to like reading a Facebook and comment like status from 4 years ago. You know, you can read it and go, oh wow, like I can't believe I was like that. Or you're gonna be like, oh, I was actually quite mature for my age back then. But you know, we've always talked about, it's still very much like you said it before, like it's part of that journey. It's part of who you are. And I think you can deliver songs and say that. So this is a song I wrote when I was feeling this way at this age. And I think people love that insight of someone, you know. I think we're caught up a lot on who we are now, which is very important. But I think that journey of how you became who you are today is just as beautiful.
Yeah, I think your fans will enjoy that because, like Hal's saying, and it gives you, it gives them a new perspective on your creative growth. And it treated as energy. Maybe it's something that you recreate or you reperform or sample even. There's ways to sort of go about it in a way that doesn't make you feel as shame about it. Yeah. But that's a great question. Yep.
So it's like two things really. It's about asking you guys what you would prefer maybe a new platform to be.
Like a streaming platform or just some media platform?
Like band or solo performer websites. I don't think we should throw the baby away with the bathwater.
No.
Because that's essentially what a platform is.
Yeah.
It's just a sort of conduit website, if you think about it, or an app.
Yeah.
And so is it subscription models? Is it, what would you like it to be?
I really like that idea. I really love Bandcamp. What they do. Just
They're PayPal.
yeah. Yeah. Not yeah.
They're in that.
Yeah.
They give you 1 day where you
They get that one day.
But it's like there's so many people just trying to siphon
Yeah.
us.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah, that's right.
why can't we have, like a YouTube or something
Yeah.
like that, where people are just going to us for the content?
I think as individual artists or as groups, I think you can do that. There's no reason not to. I think it's just expectations. I think, like I said, I'm a big fan of Bandcamp, but for a lot of people, that's like too many clicks to get your music, which is crazy to me. It's like, oh, so I download the file, then where does the file go? It's like, it goes into your computer, man. You know what I mean? It's like, because people just like the streaming services. It's like this, like click and it plays. But I think it is important. I think it's just about building awareness of your platform. It's like, yeah, you can hear it, you can, and keeping it off. And I think it is a longer road. But I think at the end of the day, I feel it's beneficial because you're kind of cultivating your own listenership, and that's important because it's the direct to consumer that everyone talks about. And you get to see all the back end to it.
And the question was, how do you navigate doing so many different things?
Great
like
question,
how to
yeah.
sort of market all those wonderful different things that you do, because they're so unique voices in, like in your production, when you're working with artists on, and how do you navigate all that and make it?
You just gotta find yourself a good wife. But in all honesty, I appreciate the very kind words. But in all honesty, yeah, man, like full respect and acknowledgement of my wife. She's very patient, very, at the same time, very encouraging. And she helps me a lot. But I think it's that thing. You're just passionate about something, and you just, if it works, it works. You know what I mean? And I think you can't be down on yourself if it doesn't. I often think like, oh, well, what would I be doing if I'm not doing this? I'll be probably depressed. I think. Also, I will say it's also as you get older. When you're young, it's like, oh, it's all about me. Check me out, I'm the best. This and that. But then as you get older, it's more about being in service. And I think there's a lot more fulfillment in helping people and seeing them get their wins than it is for yourself. And I think, it does feed you as well, but just seeing other people take their journeys. But yeah, definitely need. I'll just go on this quick tangent. So I saw this healer, right? Because I was finding it difficult to balance a lot of family and music and things like that. And this healer, she said, okay, so list me, I say it quickly so I know we've got time. List me your priorities at the moment. And I said, family, work, health, and then music. And she said to me, oh, I thought you were a musician. Like, why isn't music up there? And I'm like, I just got priorities, And she was like, well, doesn't that make you happy? And I'm like, it does. Then it makes me unhappy that I can't do it. And she's like, okay, let's do this exercise. You might think it's a bit weird, but let's do it anyway. I was like, yeah, I'm open-minded. Let's run it. So I was sitting like this, and she put an empty chair next to me, and she said, okay, I want you to imagine that music is sitting next to you. What would you say to it? And I was just like, as emotion, like, oh, and it was almost kind of like shame. I was like, oh, hey, I know we haven't been like hanging. I was really happy. She was like, you got to be open about your dialogue, and and I think for these things to work, you really have to be vulnerable. And I was just like, oh man, I just got work, I got this and that, and just making up. I think they're valid excuses as well, but excuses. Yeah. And she's like, okay, that's crazy. I want you to sit in this chair now, and I want you to be music. What would you say to you? And I was like, oh man, we don't get to hang out anymore. Like, what happened, man? We took this journey together. Now I'm just like sitting in the. What the hell, man? You changed, man. But it made me kind of realize, like, okay, like, and she said, look, I know you're creative and you work on inspiration when it strikes, but with your current schedule where you are in life, sorry, man, that's you can't do that anymore. You have to set time. So she's like, okay, so when's work? Okay, time spent with family. Yep, this. Okay, this time between this and this is where you have to get creative. I'm like, okay, so it really had to. It goes against a lot of what we're known as creative. Like, no, man, I'll just go with the energy. But when you get to a certain point in your life, it's like, nah, you got to do it here between these 2 hours, and you just get it done.
Yeah, and just to add to that, the limitation can really be beneficial, right? Because I'm sure that in your window, you're like, I gotta, that's my time.
To these hours.
Like no one interrupts me in that time. That's what a beautiful story, man. That's one of. I'm gonna have to try that.
Maybe you can do that in your workshop. Sorry, I'm going to call. I know there are still people that have questions, but that was a really great way to end the conversation. Can we please give a massive thank you